commenting at one point, sort of the prioritization of what you want to build, and one framework you had was, can that business be an N of one or a one of, or is it a one of N? And thinking about like its strategic value to Carta as the whole versus as a sort of a standalone business. How do you think about prioritizing what to build? Why did private equity come along recently, and what was its moment now?
Yeah, it's this great checklist. It's a great question. We have this checklist, David, that I think we used to play this game because you were thinking a lot about new markets for us when you were with us. And we play this game where we're like, before we enter a new market, we're like, hey, imagine, we didn't enter this market. And 5 years from now, we're sitting around the table and some startup, some company came in and had just dominated this market. And in 5 years, got 80% market share, became the de facto standard, et cetera, et cetera. And we're all sitting around going, how did we miss this? What did this company do that we're now sitting here 5 years later going, how did we lose to this startup? And it tends to boil down to three things. One is this company figured out how to make this fractured market an N of one market, what we call N of one, which means the market microstructure allows for one and only one winner in this market versus what we call a one of N market, which the market microstructure allows for multiple competitors. So the company figured out how to make this an N of one market, usually via network effect, but sometimes through economies of scale. There's different ways you can make markets N of one, but usually it's network effect. Two, they had some business model innovation that's hard to replicate. They changed the business model. And for us, when we think about new market creation, because we're in the business of new market creation, we tend to avoid going after markets with incumbents. We look for markets that don't exist yet and then try to make a market in it. And our definition of how do we define a new market is we've figured out a way to make money exchange hands in a way that hasn't happened before. So like Airbnb, new market creation, they figured out a way to get somebody who's looking for an apartment to give money to somebody who has an apartment. Nobody did that before. You always used to pay the hotels instead. So the second thing is companies figure out some new unique business model innovation that's hard to replicate. And third is they have a very high velocity customer acquisition model. Because if you are creating an N of one market with a new business model, you have to capture this market quickly before anybody else can. Otherwise, it'll fracture forever for you. And so those are kind of the things that we go through when we decide, whether to enter a market or not. And then the timing question for us is actually is simpler. So if we decide, hey, we definitely want to enter this market, and there's a lot of markets we have on our strategy deck that we want to enter at some point. So then the question is timing. So when do you do it? And for us, it's the first question we ask is, does it get easier to enter this market if we wait, or does it get harder? And there's some markets where actually it gets easier if you wait because you have more tangentialness. You are a bigger brand. You're like, for Carta X, you had to wait. The longer we waited before we would launch the private stock exchange, the easier it would be to launch because we had more critical mass. We had more companies, more investors, all of those things. There's other markets where it actually, your window of opportunity closes the longer you wait. And often that's because other competitors are coming in or the market is changing quickly on you. And so those are the ones we sequence in first. So those are really the two parts. One is, do we enter the market or not? That's a binary question. And then the second is, okay, when do we do it? And that's a question of opportunity cost.